Have you ever wondered what goes on inside the mind of someone who feels no guilt, no fear, and no empathy? What does a real psychopath think when they take someone's life and then sleep peacefully that same night? Christopher Berry-Dee, one of the world's most respected criminologists, dared to find out. He didn't study killers through files or reports. He sat across them, in cold prison rooms, face to face with murderers, rapists, and serial killers. He looked into their eyes and asked the one question most of us are too afraid to even think. Why did you do it? This book, Talking with Psychopaths and Savages, Beyond Evil, takes us on a chilling journey into their twisted minds. Not to glorify evil, but to understand it. To see what happens when humanity disappears and only darkness remains.
Chapter 1. Meeting Evil Face to Face. Christopher Berry-Dee was not an ordinary writer or reporter. He was a man who walked into real prisons, sat across from real killers, and looked straight into the eyes of pure evil. These were not stories from a movie. They were real people who had destroyed real lives. Instead of studying them from behind a screen or through case files, Berry-Dee chose to meet them directly. He wanted to understand why a human being could commit such horrifying acts. Not out of curiosity, but to show the world what evil truly looks like when it wears no mask. When he entered those interview rooms, the air was heavy, silent, and tense. In front of him sat men who had killed without emotion, some smiling politely, others completely calm, as if nothing was wrong. Many of them tried to charm him, speaking gently, pretending to be normal. But behind those fake smiles were dark, twisted minds. Berry-Dee realized that evil doesn't always shout or look scary. Sometimes it smiles, talks softly, and acts like an ordinary person. He listened to their stories, their lies, excuses, and manipulations. Some blamed their childhoods. Some said they were forced by others, and some simply didn't care. But as Berry-Dee kept digging deeper, he could see the truth, that many of these people enjoyed the power, the control, and the fear they created. They were not insane. They were cold and calculating. Through these face-to-face meetings, Berry-Dee wanted the world to understand one thing. True evil is not about monsters hiding in shadows. It can exist in plain sight, behind polite faces and calm voices. His goal was never to spread fear, but awareness, to show how dangerously normal evil can appear when you meet it face to face.
Chapter 2. What is a psychopath? Christopher Berry-Dee explains that a psychopath is not always someone who kills, but every killer he met had something in common: the cold, empty traits of psychopathy. These people don't feel emotions the way normal humans do. They don't feel guilt after hurting someone, they don't feel empathy for pain, and they don't fear punishment. What they do feel is power, the thrill of control, the satisfaction of manipulation, and the pleasure of getting what they want at any cost. Berry-Dee describes them as masters of disguise. On the outside, they can look completely normal, charming, polite, even intelligent. They know how to read people and say exactly what others want to hear. That's their weapon. They use fake emotions to blend in and gain trust. But inside, they are completely hollow. No love, no compassion, no conscience. When Berry-Dee sat across such people, he noticed how calm and confident they seemed. While talking about their crimes, they didn't show sadness or regret. Instead, some even smiled, as if remembering a good memory. That's when he realized their minds don't work like ours. To them, human life is not sacred. It's a game of power and control. He explains that psychopathy is not just about killing. It's a way of thinking, a pattern of manipulation. Many psychopaths live among us, never caught, because they know how to act normal. They wear a mask of humanity, pretending to be like everyone else. But when that mask slips, you see what they truly are: empty, emotionless, and terrifyingly calm. Berry-Dee's interviews remind us that evil doesn't always shout or show anger. Sometimes it speaks softly, with a smile, and feels nothing inside.
Chapter 3. The Charm of Evil. Christopher Berry-Dee reveals one of the most disturbing truths about psychopaths. They can be unbelievably charming. They know how to win people over with words, confidence, and fake kindness. They read people like open books. They can sense what you want to hear, how to make you feel comfortable, and how to make you trust them. That's their first weapon: charm. Many of the killers Berry-Dee interviewed didn't look dangerous at all. Some were well-spoken, confident, even funny. They could talk about their crimes in the same calm tone as someone talking about the weather. They smiled, made eye contact, and spoke politely. And that's what makes them so terrifying, because they don't look like monsters. They look like normal, even likable people. Berry-Dee explains that this charm is part of their manipulation game. Psychopaths don't just commit physical crimes, they commit emotional crimes first. They create trust, lower your guard, and make you feel safe. Once you're under their spell, they control you, mentally, emotionally, or physically. Many victims never realized the danger until it was too late. He says, evil doesn't always come with a scary face. Sometimes it wears a perfect smile. That's what makes these people so dangerous. They can blend into society so easily. They could be your coworker, a neighbor, or even someone close to you. Berry-Dee's meetings show that real evil doesn't always shout or look angry. It can be polite, soft-spoken, and friendly until the mask slips. Behind the charm lies emptiness, control, and darkness so deep that normal people can't even imagine it.
Chapter 4. Patterns of the Mind. Christopher Berry-Dee noticed something chilling during his interviews. Even though the killers came from different countries, backgrounds, and crimes, their minds followed the same dark pattern. It was as if they were all reading from the same invisible script of evil. Every psychopath he met had one thing in common: the need to control. They wanted power over others, over their victims, over society, and sometimes even over the interviewer sitting in front of them. For them, control was a thrill. They didn't care about right or wrong. They cared only about domination and winning. Lying came naturally to them. They could create entire stories without blinking. Some of them even believed their own lies. They didn't feel guilt. In fact, some smiled while describing their crimes. Berry-Dee realized that for them, people were not human beings, just objects to use, play with, and destroy when bored. Another pattern he found was their love for risk. Many psychopaths enjoy danger not because they have to, but because it excites them. They feel powerful when they break rules and get away with it. That's why some of them return to the crime scene or even contact the police just to feel smarter than everyone else. Berry-Dee says that these patterns, manipulation, control, lying, and risk, form the backbone of a psychopath's mind. Once you learn to recognize these signs, you can protect yourself better. Because the truth is, not every psychopath is a murderer. But every psychopath has the potential to harm emotionally, mentally, or physically. He warns, evil often repeats itself.
only the face changes. Understanding these mental patterns doesn't just help us understand killers, it helps us understand how darkness hides in plain sight.
Chapter 5. Inside the Prison Walls. Christopher Berry-Dee takes us into a world most of us can't even imagine, the inside of maximum security prisons. These are not ordinary places. They are built to hold the most dangerous human beings alive. The air itself feels heavy, filled with stories of pain, cruelty, and darkness. Even the silence inside feels louder than words. Berry-Dee walks through these prison corridors not as a guard or a judge, but as a listener, someone who wants to understand what goes on inside the mind of pure evil. He sits across from murderers, rapists, and serial killers, face to face, and asks them to explain what they did and why. What's shocking is not their crimes, but the calm way they talk about them. Many of these men describe horrific acts as if they were talking about an ordinary event. No emotion, no regret, no guilt. One killer could talk about taking a life in the same relaxed tone as someone describing breakfast. Berry-Dee doesn't interrupt, doesn't dramatize. He just lets their words reveal the truth. And that truth is colder and scarier than any movie or story could show. He realizes that these people don't feel what normal people feel. Their sense of morality is missing. They don't understand pain the way others do. For them, cruelty is not shocking, it's normal. They enjoy control, and even in prison, they try to manipulate the people around them, including Berry-Dee himself. The author doesn't focus on blood or gore. Instead, he focuses on the mind, the cold, logical, and emotionless psychology behind the acts. He wants readers to see evil as it truly is, not wild or crazy, but calm, intelligent, and calculated. That's what makes it terrifying. Berry-Dee's time inside these prisons shows that real horror doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. And when you hear those whispers of evil, you realize that understanding them is the only way to stop them.
Chapter 6. The Mind Games of Psychopaths. Christopher Berry-Dee explains that when you sit across a psychopath, you are not just having a conversation, you are entering a psychological battlefield. Every word, every silence, every look becomes part of their game. They don't just talk to you, they test you. They want to know if they can control your emotions, your reactions, even your thoughts. During his prison interviews, Berry-Dee noticed how these killers tried to take charge of the situation. Some would start with fake friendliness, smiling, cracking jokes, trying to make him drop his guard. Others used intimidation, staring silently, speaking coldly, or suddenly bringing up disturbing details to make him uncomfortable. It was all a test of power. Psychopaths feed on emotional reactions. If you show fear, they feel powerful. If you get angry, they feel victorious. That's why Berry-Dee had to train himself to stay completely calm, no matter what they said. He became like a mirror, reflecting their words back to them without emotion. That's how he made them reveal their real selves. He learned that for a psychopath, conversation is not communication, it's control. They play with people's emotions like instruments, creating fear, curiosity, or sympathy just to feel dominant. Some would twist the truth, shift blame, or even try to make Berry-Dee doubt his own moral views. It was pure manipulation, but he never let them win. This chapter shows how dangerous psychological manipulation can be. These people can enter your mind without you realizing it. They speak smoothly, logically, even politely, but every word has an intention behind it. Berry-Dee reminds us that emotional control is the strongest weapon when facing manipulative minds. If you stay calm, you take away their power. If you let emotions rule you, they've already won.
His work shows the importance of balance. To understand evil, you must face it without letting it touch your soul.
Chapter 7. Why They Kill. The Search for Power. Christopher Berry-Dee discovered something deeply unsettling during his years of interviews. Most psychopaths don't kill out of hate, anger, or revenge. They kill for one main reason: power. For them, taking a life is not just an act of violence, it's an experience of total control. In that moment, they feel like gods, deciding who lives and who dies. These people are not driven by emotion. In fact, that's what makes them so dangerous. They're cold, detached, and logical. When they commit murder, they don't see a human being in front of them. They see an object, something to play with, something to dominate. For them, the act of killing is a way to feel powerful, alive, and superior. Berry-Dee describes this chilling addiction to control. Once a psychopath experiences the thrill of having complete power over another person, it becomes like a drug. They crave it again and again. Each crime gives them a rush, a sense that they can do anything and get away with it. That's why many serial killers repeat their crimes. It's not about the victim, it's about the feeling. He explains that for normal people, power comes from success, love, or achievement. But for psychopaths, power comes from destruction. They don't create, they destroy to feel alive. That's what separates them from everyone else. They don't kill because they're out of control. They kill because they want control. Berry-Dee's interviews show how these killers often describe their actions with pride, as if they've achieved something great. They don't talk about guilt, they talk about excitement. And when he asks them if they regret anything, most of them just smile or say, "No, I'd do it again." This chapter reminds us that true evil doesn't always look chaotic. Sometimes it's calm, calculated, and completely aware of what it's doing. For psychopaths, murder is not madness, it's method. And that's what makes them terrifying. Chapter 8. The Role of Childhood and Trauma. Christopher Berry-Dee explores one of the most debated questions in criminology. Are psychopaths born evil, or are they made by their environment? He discovered that behind many of these cold-blooded killers lies a dark and painful past. Broken homes, violent parents, childhood abuse, neglect, and loneliness. These are common threads that run through the lives of many murderers. He met killers who were beaten as children, starved of love, or constantly humiliated. Some grew up watching violence at home, a father hitting the mother, or a parent abusing them in silence. Over time, their emotions started to shut down. Love turned into anger, pain turned into numbness, and fear turned into hatred. For some, killing later became a way to take back the control they lost as children. But Berry-Dee also reminds us that not everyone with a bad past becomes a monster. Millions of people face trauma and grow up to live kind, compassionate lives. That's why he says it's never just one factor. It's a mix of nature and nurture. Some people are born with a brain that lacks empathy or impulse control. When that kind of mind grows up in an environment full of violence and pain, the result can be deadly. He points out that society often fails to notice these warning signs early. Many of these individuals show dangerous behavior in school, hurting animals, bullying others, lying without guilt, yet no one intervenes. By the time they grow up, their empathy is completely gone. The system sees them only when it's too late. Berry-Dee's message in this chapter is powerful and tragic. While childhood trauma doesn't excuse evil, it helps us understand how evil begins. He wants readers to look beyond the headlines and ask, could we have stopped this before it became murder? This chapter is not about sympathy, it's about awareness. Because the more we understand the roots of darkness, the better chance we have to prevent it from growing again. Chapter 9. The Psychology of Remorse, or the lack of it. One of the most disturbing things Christopher Berry-Dee discovered in his interviews was the total absence of guilt. When normal people hurt someone, even by mistake, they feel bad. They apologize, they lose sleep, they wish they could undo the damage. But psychopaths? They feel absolutely nothing. Their brain simply doesn't understand remorse. Berry-Dee describes how many of these killers could talk about their crimes, torture, murder, cruelty, with a calm, almost cheerful tone. Some even smiled while describing how they took someone's life. They didn't cry, didn't flinch, didn't regret. To them, it was just another event, another experience. The act had no emotional weight at all. He explains that science supports this too. Studies show that psychopaths' brains work differently. The parts of the brain that process empathy and guilt, like the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, are underactive or damaged. So when they hurt someone, they don't feel the pain or sadness that normal people would. Their emotional system is cold and flat, like a machine. Berry-Dee recalls sitting across from killers who enjoyed describing every detail of their crimes, not to confess, but to show power. Some even tried to shock him, watching for a reaction, as if their words were weapons. But he never gave them that satisfaction. He knew that their lack of guilt wasn't just evil, it was emptiness. He writes that this emotional emptiness is scarier than anger or hatred. Angry people can calm down. Hateful people can change with time, but a person who feels nothing, no love, no regret, no connection, is truly dangerous because there's nothing inside to stop them. This chapter reminds us that remorse is what keeps humanity human. It's the invisible line between mistake and cruelty. And when that line disappears, when a person loses the ability to feel guilt, they step into the dark world Berry-Dee calls beyond evil. Chapter 10. Evil Beyond Crime. Psychopaths in Everyday Life. Christopher Berry-Dee makes a shocking observation. Not all psychopaths are behind bars. Some are walking freely among us. They might not kill, but they manipulate, exploit, and control people in everyday life. You'll find them in offices, politics, business, and even relationships, smiling, charming, and pretending to care, while using everyone around them for personal gain. He explains that psychopathy isn't just about murder. It's a personality disorder. The same cold logic, fake charm, and lack of empathy that drive killers can also exist in successful, respected people. In fact, some psychopaths never commit physical crimes because they don't need to. They use words, money, and influence as their weapons. These are the people who take credit for others' work, lie effortlessly, or destroy someone's confidence just to rise higher. They can look confident, charismatic, and smart, the kind of people others admire. But behind that image, there's emptiness. They don't care who gets hurt, as long as they win. Berry-Dee says that corporate and political worlds are often perfect hiding places for such minds. These environments reward confidence, risk-taking, and manipulation, exactly what psychopaths excel at. And since they're good actors, society often mistakes their ruthlessness for leadership. He warns that these everyday psychopaths are dangerous in a quieter way. They don't spill blood, but they destroy lives, emotionally, mentally, and financially. They break trust, play mind games, and walk away without a hint of guilt. Berry-Dee calls this a wake-up call for all of us. Evil isn't always obvious. It doesn't always wear a mask or carry a weapon. Sometimes it wears a suit, speaks politely, and smiles at you in a meeting. This chapter reminds us to be aware, not paranoid, but alert. Because the truth is, The scariest kind of evil isn't the one locked in prison. It's the one that looks just like everyone else.
Lessons from the Darkness. Christopher Berry-Dee didn't write this book just to shock or scare people. He wrote it so we can learn from the darkness. After spending years studying the minds of psychopaths and killers, he realized something powerful. If we understand how evil thinks, we can protect ourselves from it in daily life. He explains that psychopaths and manipulators are not always behind bars. Some exist around us, in relationships, workplaces, friendships, and even families. They use charm, guilt, or fear to control people. They lie with confidence, make you doubt yourself, and slowly drain your peace of mind. And most of the time, we don't even realize it until it's too late. Berry-Dee teaches that the first step to protection is recognition. Once you learn the signs, constant lying, lack of empathy, emotional manipulation, and the need to dominate, you can stop them from entering your life. He reminds us, a snake only bites when you don't see it. Awareness is our defense. He also highlights the importance of emotional strength. Psychopaths feed on weakness, on people who always try to please others. That's why it's important to set boundaries, say no when needed, and never ignore your gut feeling. If something feels off, it usually is. Berry-Dee's lessons go beyond crime. They apply to every area of life. He says we must train our minds the way we train our bodies. Stay alert, emotionally intelligent, and aware of human behavior. Because evil doesn't always look evil. Sometimes it hides behind love, authority, or charm. In the end, he gives us a hopeful message. Knowledge is our shield. When we understand darkness, it loses its power over us. Evil thrives in ignorance, but the moment you recognize it, you take away its control. This chapter reminds us that studying the dark side of humanity isn't about fear. It's about strength. It's about knowing what's out there so we can protect the light within us. After spending years sitting across from some of the world's most dangerous minds, Christopher Berry-Dee could have easily become cold or detached. But what makes his work so powerful is that he never lost his humanity. He never forgot that behind every horror story, there are victims, families, and broken lives that deserve to be remembered. Berry-Dee says that to truly fight evil, you must first understand it, not fear it. He never went into prisons to glorify killers or turn them into celebrities. He went there to uncover the truth, to show the world how darkness operates when no one is watching. His mission was always about learning, not sensationalism. During his interviews, he faced chilling moments, calm voices describing brutal murders, smiles hiding unimaginable cruelty. Yet he remained calm, professional, and deeply human. He refused to see himself as superior. Instead, he saw himself as a mirror, reflecting the reality of these minds back to the world. He believes empathy is what separates us from the people he studied. A psychopath cannot feel love, guilt, or compassion, but we can. And that's why it's so important not to let the knowledge of evil make us bitter or hopeless. Instead, it should make us value humanity even more. Berry-Dee reminds us that understanding evil doesn't mean accepting it. It means shining a light into the darkness so that others can see the truth. He says, the more we understand what makes a monster, the better we can stop one. His work teaches that awareness and empathy must go hand in hand. Without awareness, we become victims of manipulation. Without empathy, we become no better than those we study. This chapter is a tribute to Berry-Dee's courage and compassion, a reminder that even when surrounded by the darkest parts of humanity, he chose to stay human. And that, perhaps, is the greatest lesson of all. The book closes with a question that stays with you long after the last page. What truly is evil? Is it the act of killing itself, or the complete absence of humanity behind it?
Christopher Berry-Dee doesn't give a simple answer because there isn't one. He shows that evil is not always loud or violent. Sometimes it walks quietly beside us. Sometimes it smiles, speaks politely, and hides behind normal faces. That's what makes it so terrifying, its ability to blend in. Through his interviews and research, Berry-Dee reveals that true evil isn't just about blood or brutality. It's about emptiness, the cold, hollow space where empathy should be. These people don't kill out of rage. They kill because they can. Because for them, power and control replace love and guilt. But the author also leaves us with hope. He reminds us that for every act of cruelty, there are thousands of acts of kindness. For every psychopath, there are millions of people who care, protect, and love. Evil may exist, but it doesn't define humanity. Berry-Dee's final message is not fear, but awareness. To recognize evil, not run from it. To understand darkness, but never let it consume your light. He makes us see that the fight against evil begins within, in our choices, our empathy, and our courage to stay good even when the world feels cruel. And in the end, his words echo like a warning and a reminder. Evil doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just smiles quietly.
This book is not something you read for entertainment. It's something you experience. Every page makes you think, makes you uncomfortable, and makes you realize how deep human darkness can go. But that's exactly why it's important. Christopher Berry-Dee doesn't write these stories to scare us. He writes them to prepare us, to open our eyes to the truth that evil is real and it can exist anywhere. Yet at the same time, he reminds us that understanding evil doesn't make us weak, it makes us stronger. When we know how these minds work, we learn how to recognize danger. We learn how to protect ourselves, our families, and the people we care about. Knowledge becomes our weapon, and awareness becomes our shield. The biggest lesson from this book is simple but powerful. You can't fight what you don't understand. And once you understand evil, you stop being afraid of it. So as the book ends, we are left not with fear, but with clarity. Because to truly protect the good in this world, we must first understand the darkness that threatens it. And that, as Berry-Dee shows, is how light always wins in the end.